Take a standard American semi, a Peterbilt 389, Kenworth W900, anything with that long hood, that massive cab, that locomotive presence that you recognize from a mile away on I-10 or I-80. Now try to drive it through the streets of Amsterdam. Narrow canal roads barely wide enough for two cars. Medieval street layouts built 400 years before the internal combustion engine existed. Bridges with height restrictions. Loading docks designed for vehicles half the size. That American truck wouldn't make it 3 blocks before it became physically stuck, not metaphorically stuck. Actually mechanically, geometrically, impossibly stuck. Now flip it. Take a standard European cabover, a Volvo FH, a Mercedes Actros. That flat-faced design, where the driver sits right at the front with no hood whatsoever, and put it on I-80 between Chicago and Salt Lake City. 800 miles of straight highway, crosswinds coming off the Great Basin, 11 hours of driving, the European truck will get there. But the driver will feel every mile of it in ways an American trucker never would. Less stability at speed, more cab noise, less crash protection at highway velocities. A living space so small compared to an American sleeper that experienced U.S. drivers call it a punishment. These two machines were built for the same job, moving freight from point A to point B. But they look so different, work so differently, and are so specifically engineered for their own environments that swapping them between continents creates immediate, serious, measurable problems. And the reason why goes so much deeper than tradition, culture, or design preference. It goes down to geography, to law, to physics. To the specific way two continents built their roads, wrote their regulations, and decided over decades what a truck is actually supposed to do. This video breaks all of it down. And by the end, you'll understand not just why these trucks look different, but why they have to. Everything starts with the map. And the map tells a story so obvious, so massive, and so fundamental that it's easy to miss because it's hiding in plain sight. The continental United States covers 3.8 million square miles. It has roughly 160,000 miles of highway. The distance from Los Angeles to New York is 2,800 miles, farther than the distance from London to Cairo. A truck driver running the I-10 corridor from Jacksonville, Florida to Los Angeles crosses 8 states, covers 2,460 miles, and can go hundreds of miles between cities large enough to have a real truck stop. The road is wide, it's straight, it's designed for sustained high-speed travel. The environment is vast, open, and engineered for distance. Europe is a completely different planet. The entire European Union, 27 countries, fits inside the continental United States with room left over. A truck driver in Germany can cross into France, Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands in a single 8-hour shift. The road network connects cities that were already ancient when America was founded. Streets in Paris, Rome, Amsterdam, and Barcelona were laid out for horse carts, not 53-foot trailers. The density is extreme, 450 people per square mile in Belgium versus 94 per square mile across the US as a whole. And critically, European truckers don't just drive between cities. They drive through them, constantly, every route, every day. This geographic reality creates two completely different operational requirements. In America, the truck's primary challenge is distance, covering thousands of miles efficiently, maintaining stability at speed. Keeping the driver comfortable enough to function over 11-hour shifts without destroying their body. Maneuverability is a secondary concern because the roads are built to accommodate large vehicles. You're not threading a needle through a medieval city center. You're rolling down a corridor of concrete that was designed specifically for you. In Europe, the truck's primary challenge is maneuverability, turning on streets that are barely wider than the truck itself, backing into loading docks surrounded by centuries-old buildings. Navigating roundabouts designed before anyone imagined a vehicle longer than a horse-drawn wagon. Distance is secondary because a long international trip in Europe might be 600 miles, what an American trucker calls a routine overnight run. Same job, completely different world. And the truck had no choice but to reflect that world in every dimension of its design. Here's the part that most people don't know, and it's the part that explains why these two truck designs didn't gradually converge over decades into something similar: the laws. Specifically, the single most consequential regulatory difference between European and American trucking: how each jurisdiction measures and limits the truck. In the European Union, trucks are subject to a strict maximum overall length limit. A standard European semi-truck combination, cab plus trailer, cannot exceed 18.75 meters, which is about 61.5 feet in most configurations. That limit is absolute and uniform across all EU member states. Every centimeter of that total length is accounted for. The cab takes up space. The connection between cab and trailer takes up space. The trailer itself takes up space. And the cargo that the truck exists to carry is only what fits in whatever trailer length is left over after everything else. Do the math and the answer is immediate and unavoidable. If the cab is shorter, the trailer is longer, which means more cargo per trip. More cargo per trip means more revenue per mile driven. The economic pressure to shrink the cab to its absolute minimum is overwhelming, and the regulatory framework enforces it from the other direction by making length the hard constraint. The result is the cab-over design, where the engine is positioned underneath the cab rather than in front of it. The driver sits right at the leading edge of the vehicle. And the entire front of the truck is compacted to the smallest possible dimension. This design wasn't chosen because European engineers thought it looked better. It was mathematically forced by the length regulation. In the United States, federal regulations work entirely differently. The government does not regulate overall truck length at the federal level the way Europe does. What U.S. regulations do govern strictly and precisely is weight per axle. A standard 5-axle semi-configuration is limited to 80,000 pounds gross vehicle weight, with specific limits for each axle group. As long as the weight is properly distributed across the axles, the truck can be as long as individual state regulations allow, and most states permit trailer lengths of 53 feet. With no effective penalty for a longer cab out front. This one regulatory difference, length versus axle weight, cascades through the entire design of every truck built for each market. Because American length regulations don't penalize a long cab, manufacturers can put the engine in front of the driver, extend the hood, create a spacious cab interior, and build a living space that a European truck simply cannot match without exceeding the legal maximum overall length. The law didn't just shape the trucks. The law is the trucks. Every design decision flows from that single regulatory fork in the road. Once you understand the regulatory framework, the engineering differences between European and American trucks stop looking like stylistic choices and start looking like the only logical outcomes of the constraints each design operates under. The European cab-over engine, COE in industry terminology, positions the driver directly above the front axle, with the engine mounted below and behind the cab floor. The driver sits at the very front of the vehicle. There is no hood. There is no crumple zone in front of the driver's compartment created by an extended engine bay. What there is instead is an exceptionally tight turning radius. Some European cabovers can execute turns that would be physically impossible for a same-length conventional truck. The front axle sits almost directly under the driver's seat, which means the cab swings around tight corners with a precision that drivers describe as almost car-like compared to the American alternative. The practical operational benefit is enormous in European conditions. A Volvo FH or DAF XF can back into a loading dock on a narrow street in a German industrial district that a Peterbilt couldn't even approach from the correct angle. For a trucker making 15 deliveries a day in dense urban areas, that maneuverability difference isn't an abstract engineering advantage. It's the difference between completing the route on schedule and spending 45 minutes trying to reposition a vehicle that wasn't designed for the space it's being asked to occupy. The maintenance access equation is also different. European cabovers tilt the entire cab forward. The whole thing pivots on a hinge at the front axle, exposing the engine from above for service. It's a clever solution that works well in purpose-built maintenance facilities, but it requires the right equipment and space to execute properly. An American driver who needs to check their engine in a roadside emergency can pop the hood in about 30 seconds, standing in front of the truck without any special equipment. That distinction matters on a route where the nearest dealer is 200 miles away. The American conventional long hood, engine in front, driver positioned behind and above, solves a completely different set of problems. The extended wheelbase that comes with placing the engine ahead of the cab creates a longer, more stable vehicle platform that tracks straighter at highway speed, resists crosswind buffeting more effectively, and transmits less road vibration into the cab over long distances. On an 8-hour run down I-40 through Oklahoma and New Mexico, that stability is not a luxury. It is what makes the difference between arriving at the destination with a driver who can safely make decisions and a driver whose concentration has been ground down by hours of fighting and unstable machine. The engine placement also gives American trucks a significant maintenance advantage at scale. The conventional hood design gives technicians full walk-around access to every component of a large diesel engine without specialized cab tilting equipment. At major U.S. fleets that run hundreds of trucks and maintain their own shops, this straightforward access translates directly into faster service turnaround, lower labor costs, and less downtime per vehicle per year. Here's the uncomfortable truth buried in this comparison, and it's one the competitor videos in this space consistently avoid because it's not a flattering comparison for one side. In a direct frontal collision at highway speed, the American conventional truck design offers the driver substantially more physical protection than the European cabover. And the reason is brutally simple: the hood. In a frontal impact, energy needs somewhere to go. Physics doesn't negotiate. The energy generated by a collision between a loaded semi and any other object has to be dissipated, converted from kinetic energy into deformation, heat, and sound, and the more material and distance available to do that conversion, the more energy is absorbed before it reaches the occupant compartment. An American conventional truck with a 6-foot hood in front of the driver has 6 feet of engineered crumple zone between the driver and the point of impact. 6 feet of engine, frame rails, hood structure, and crash-absorbing material all working to slow the rate of deceleration before the cab itself is involved. A European cabover has none of that. The driver is at the front. The point of impact is the point where the driver is. European manufacturers have invested enormously in cab structure reinforcement, extremely rigid passenger cells, advanced airbag systems, rollover protection structures to compensate for the absence of a frontal crumple zone. Modern European cabs are genuinely impressive pieces of structural engineering, and they meet strict European crash standards. But the physics of impact energy dissipation don't change based on engineering effort. Distance and material between the driver and the collision point matters, and the cabover has less of it by definition. In Europe, this trade-off is accepted because the alternative, a conventional long-hood truck, would be incompatible with the road network, illegal under length regulations, and commercially unviable for the cargo economics that European fleets depend on. On European roads, where average speeds are lower and highway driving is interspersed with constant urban maneuvering, the risk profile is different from a U.S. highway. The engineering compromise makes sense in context. On American interstates, where trucks routinely travel at 65 to 70 miles per hour for hours at a stretch, the energy involved in a frontal collision at those speeds is substantially higher. The crumple zone that the conventional design provides isn't just a nice feature. It's a meaningful safety margin in a high-speed crash environment. This is one of the least discussed reasons why American trucking culture has never seriously moved toward widespread cabover adoption. Even when cabover trucks were briefly popular in the U.S. market during the 1970s. The safety argument for the conventional on American highways is real, and it was understood by drivers and fleet operators long before it was formally studied by researchers. If you want to understand why American truckers would never willingly switch to a European cab design, spend 5 minutes talking to a driver who has done both. The experience inside the cab is so different that comparing them feels like comparing a studio apartment to a one-bedroom. Technically, both are places to live. But the quality of that life is not remotely equivalent. An American long-haul sleeper cab, a Peterbilt 579 Ultraloft, a Kenworth T680 Advantage, a Freightliner Cascadia Evolution, gives the driver a sleeping compartment that is 6 to 7 feet long, wide enough to turn over without hitting the walls, tall enough to sit up in, and equipped with a proper mattress, storage for personal items, a mini refrigerator, climate control, and enough electrical capacity to run real appliances. For a driver spending 5 nights a week in that space, it functions as a genuine living quarters, not comfortable in a luxury hotel sense, but livable in a sustained, functional human sense. A European sleeper, even a premium configuration from Volvo or Scania, gives the driver a narrower bunk, tighter headroom, and a cab interior that prioritizes ergonomic driving position over residential comfort, because the regulations that determine overall vehicle length force the cab to be as compact as possible. European drivers make it work. They've built routines around the constraints, know which truck stops have decent shower facilities, and have developed personal systems for living efficiently in limited space. But ask a veteran European driver who has ever ridden in an American sleeper what they think of it. And the answer is usually some variation of "it's a completely different universe." This isn't about Europeans being worse off or Americans being spoiled. It's about the cascading consequences of the regulatory and geographic decisions made generations ago. The American driver covers 500 miles today and 500 miles tomorrow and 500 miles the day after, sleeping in the cab every night for a career that lasts 2 decades. The cab has to be livable at that scale. The European driver covers 300 miles today, crosses a border, delivers in 3 different cities, and may return to a home base more frequently on certain route types. The operational patterns are genuinely different, and the cabs reflect that difference faithfully. Electric trucks are coming to American highways whether the industry is ready or not. The Tesla Semi is already delivering freight for PepsiCo and Walmart on regional routes. Freightliner's eCascadia is in commercial operation with multiple U.S. fleets. Kenworth and Peterbilt both have electric models in production. The technology is real, it's here, and it's going to scale. And when people look at an electric truck, particularly the Tesla Semi with its radical aerodynamic design and no traditional hood, they ask a reasonable question. Does electrification finally erase the design differences between American and European trucks? If you don't need a big diesel engine in front of the cab, does the whole conventional versus cabover debate become obsolete? The short answer is no. The slightly longer answer is, it's complicated and the complications are all non-technical. The electric drivetrain itself doesn't care about cab architecture. Electric motors are compact modular and can be positioned anywhere in the vehicle. There's no cooling requirement that demands a long hood. There's no engine noise that needs to be isolated from the cab by distance. From a pure mechanical standpoint, you could build an American-style electric truck with a cabover design tomorrow and the powertrain would be perfectly happy. The technology doesn't require the hood. But the regulations still do. American federal law still doesn't penalize overall length the way European law does. A U.S. fleet buying an electric truck still wants the maximum trailer length, 53 feet, which means they still have no financial incentive to shrink the cab. The economics that drove conventional design in the first place are still present, even if the diesel engine that originally created the hood is gone. The infrastructure gap is also enormous, and it matters. Electric trucks operating in Europe work well on shorter, more predictable routes with regular return-to-base cycles. Exactly the operational pattern European trucking already uses. In the United States, a truck running the I-10 corridor from Jacksonville to LA needs real range, fast charging availability across 2,460 miles of route, and the ability to manage extreme temperature variations from Florida humidity to Arizona desert heat to California mountain passes. The charging network that would make pure electric viable for long-haul U.S. operation doesn't fully exist yet. Which means diesel and the conventional truck designs optimized for diesel aren't going anywhere soon. What's most likely is a split future. Electric cabovers dominating European urban and regional distribution. Electric conventionals and hydrogen fuel cell trucks handling American long-haul. The technology changes, the geography doesn't. And the geography, as we've established, is what actually determines what the truck looks like. Next time you're on an American highway and a semi rolls past you, that long hood, that massive presence. That unmistakable silhouette that you've seen 1,000 times without ever really thinking about, I want you to see it differently. That hood isn't decoration, that cab isn't oversized. That entire design is the answer to a specific question. How do you move 40 tons of freight efficiently and safely across 2,000 miles of open American highway? With a driver inside who needs to function at full capacity after sleeping in the truck for 5 consecutive nights. The answer is the truck you're looking at. Every dimension of it, the hood length, the cab height, the wheelbase, the sleeping compartment, the engine position, is a direct response to American geography, American law, and the American way of running freight. It didn't happen by accident. It didn't happen because of tradition or stubbornness or cultural preference. It happened because the engineers who designed it were solving real problems with real constraints. And this is the solution that works. The European truck is solving different problems with different constraints, and it's equally correct for its environment. Neither is superior. Both are exactly right for where they operate and completely wrong for where they don't. That's what great engineering looks like. Not one universal answer, but the perfect specific answer for each specific problem. The American truck is the American roads answer. And now you know why every line of it makes sense. If this is the kind of content that changes how you see the machines around you, subscribe. Every week we take something you pass on the highway and show you what's actually going on underneath. There's more here than most people ever stop to look for. We're going to find all of it. Drop a comment. If you had to drive cross-country in a European cab-over truck, how long do you think you'd last before you wanted your American rig back?